James Miller was a 36-year-old single father living in a modest two-bedroom house on the outskirts of the city, working tirelessly as a mechanic in a small auto repair shop while raising his 12-year-old daughter, Emily, who was the light of his life and the only thing that gave him strength after losing his wife to cancer 4 years ago. Life hadn't been easy for James. Bills often stacked up on the kitchen table, groceries had to be planned carefully, and Emily's school tuition was a constant worry. But James never let his daughter see the full weight of his struggles, instead putting on a brave face and telling her that everything would be fine. When the landlord increased his rent, James knew he needed an extra source of income, and after a week of sleepless nights and checking his bank balance, he came up with the idea of renting out the spare room in his house, the room that once belonged to his late wife, though the decision was not easy emotionally. After posting an ad online, he received a few inquiries, but none seemed genuine until one message appeared from a girl named Clara, a 19-year-old college student who said she was moving closer to campus and needed a safe and quiet place to stay. James hesitated but agreed to meet her, thinking that maybe this could be the solution to his financial problems. When Clara arrived, James noticed her immediately. She was polite, soft-spoken, and carried herself with a certain grace, though she was dressed simply in jeans, a hoodie, and sneakers. She introduced herself shyly, mentioning that she was studying literature at the university nearby, and she didn't give much more detail about her background. James showed her the room, and to his relief, she said she loved it and wanted to move in as soon as possible. What James didn't know was that Clara was the daughter of Richard Stanford, a billionaire businessman who owned multiple corporations and was among the wealthiest men in the country. Clara, however, wanted to live a normal life away from the spotlight, tired of being treated differently because of her father's fortune. She had decided not to reveal her last name when applying for the room, fearing that James might reject her or treat her differently if he knew. To her, this small, humble home felt far more real and comforting than the cold, enormous mansion she grew up in. As the days passed, Clara settled in, and Emily quickly grew fond of her. Emily loved reading, and when she discovered that Clara was studying literature, she asked endless questions about stories and characters, and Clara gladly shared her knowledge, often reading aloud to Emily in the evenings. James watched these moments from a distance, feeling grateful that his daughter had someone kind to spend time with, especially when he worked late hours. He noticed that Clara often helped with chores without being asked, cooking dinner sometimes or folding laundry while chatting with Emily. Something about her presence warmed the house, filling a void that had been empty since his wife's passing. Still, James couldn't help but wonder about Clara. She never spoke of her family, never had visitors, and never seemed to struggle financially despite paying rent on time. She was modest in everything she did, yet occasionally he caught glimpses of habits that didn't quite fit the picture of a struggling student. Once, she accidentally dropped her wallet, and James caught sight of several $100 bills tucked neatly inside, far more than any typical college student carried around. Another time, he overheard her on the phone, speaking in a tone that was more formal, almost as though she was used to giving instructions rather than asking questions. But whenever he asked, Clara would simply smile and change the subject. Meanwhile, Clara was learning something about life in James's house that she never experienced before: genuine simplicity. She had grown up with maids, drivers, and luxury at every corner, but here she saw James working 12-hour shifts, then coming home exhausted but still sitting down to help Emily with her homework, or fixing the leaky faucet late at night instead of calling someone else to do it. She admired his resilience, his determination, and the way he prioritized his daughter above all else. Deep inside, Clara felt a connection forming, one she couldn't quite explain. One evening, James came home earlier than usual to find Clara and Emily baking cookies in the kitchen. Flour covered the counter, Emily's face was smudged, and Clara was laughing in a way James had never heard before, a laugh so genuine it filled the room. For a brief moment, he felt something stir inside him, something he hadn't allowed himself to feel since losing his wife, hope. But he quickly brushed it away, reminding himself that Clara was just a tenant, much younger than him, and likely had her own life ahead of her. Yet the bond between them continued to grow stronger with every passing day. Trouble came when James received notice from Emily's school that her tuition was overdue. He tried everything: overtime shifts, borrowing from friends, but the amount was too high. He sat at the kitchen table one night, head in his hands, feeling utterly defeated. Clara noticed his stress and gently asked if everything was all right. At first, James resisted telling her, not wanting to burden his tenant with his problems, but eventually, he confessed that he was struggling to pay Emily's tuition and feared she might have to leave the school she loved. Clara listened quietly, her heart aching for him, and though she desperately wanted to help, she knew revealing her wealth would break the trust she had built. Instead, she subtly slipped an envelope with cash under his door the next morning with a note saying, "For Emily's education, consider it a loan, no strings attached." James was stunned when he found it. At first, he was angry, thinking Clara was overstepping, but when he saw Emily's excited face about staying in school, he couldn't refuse. He confronted Clara, asking where she got the money, but she simply smiled and said she had been saving from part-time jobs and scholarships. Something inside James told him there was more to the story, but her sincerity made it hard to press further. Weeks turned into months, and the bond between the three grew like a family. Emily often called Clara her big sister, and James couldn't deny that Clara felt like part of their home now. One weekend, James was invited to a charity event by his boss, and to his shock, when he arrived, he saw Clara there, dressed elegantly in a designer gown, standing beside none other than Richard Stanford, the billionaire whose face James recognized from magazines and television. The truth hit him like a wave. Clara wasn't just a tenant, she was the daughter of one of the richest men in the country. Clara saw the shock on his face and pulled him aside, tears in her eyes. She confessed that she hid her identity because she wanted to live as a normal girl, not as the daughter of a tycoon. She apologized for lying but begged him to understand that she had never once seen him or Emily as charity projects, she genuinely loved being with them. James felt betrayed at first, struggling to reconcile the humble, kind-hearted Clara he knew with the millionaire's daughter standing before him. But as he looked at her, he realized that nothing had truly changed. She was still the same girl who read stories to Emily, baked cookies in his kitchen, and helped carry the weight of his struggles without judgment. In the end, James forgave her, realizing that wealth didn't define character. Clara continued to live with them, though now the truth was in the open. She used her influence to help secure Emily's future education, but she did so carefully, always respecting James's pride and independence. What began as a simple rental agreement had turned into something far deeper, a new family built not on wealth or circumstance, but on love, trust, and shared struggles. And as James watched Clara and Emily laugh together under the evening sky, he felt something he hadn't felt in years: peace, and the hope of a brighter tomorrow.